Welcome back. This morning in our Sunday Spotlight, we're talking summer travel. The man in the know on where to go is travel journalist extraordinaire Peter Greenberg. We're happy that he carved out some time for us today. Peter, thank you so much for joining us. You're actually afloat as we talk. Is that right?
I am. I'm near Lake Superior in a place called Thunder Bay. It's about 3 hours west of Toronto.
And do you want people to go there? Is this a great tip? Did we just get some inside info?
Well, you did. Actually, I'm on a special expedition ship. Normally, it spends time in the Antarctic between October and February. Then they bring it up to the Great Lakes. We actually started this trip in Milwaukee on Lake Michigan, then through Lake Huron, through the locks into Lake Superior. Most Americans have no clue about the Great Lakes. And because this is an expedition ship, we've got 17 Zodiacs. We've got a deep sea submersible. 2 days ago, I went down on the submarine to the bottom of Lake Huron. That was amazing. And we're learning a lot about our Great Lakes.
Super cool. Another reason I want to be Peter Greenberg when I grow up. Peter, let's talk about what we just saw. We had you here in the wintertime, and we looked ahead to summer travel. I heard you talking on the great travel update on your website, which I'd encourage people to check out. But you were saying Memorial Day, which we've now just passed, was a good stress test for the system. So how did we do?
Well, it was a good stress test, but I have to qualify it because weather was not an issue. And the airlines were actually flying 10% fewer flights. The lines were still big at the airports because the airlines were flying more people on fewer flights to airports at peak times. So if you were at the airport on Memorial Day and it appeared like everybody you've ever grown up with in your life was there with you, you were right. Americans are traveling more than 2019. And in fact, we're spending more. By the end of this summer, we will have spent $214 billion, that's right, $billion on our summer vacations. So our demand for travel has never been stronger. The real question is, are we being price sensitive? Because airfares have never been higher and hotel rates are soaring. It's not going to be a pleasant summer if you have to go to your wallet.
And what is it? Is it the fewer flights? Is it route reduction? What is leading to those airfares being so high? I've heard from so many people who are traveling this summer that something they thought would be pretty reasonable is just off the charts expensive.
Well, a round trip ticket right now from New York to London coach is like $2,200. And we haven't even gotten a start on domestic fares. What you have is sort of a perfect storm. You have airlines cutting routes to so many cities, secondary and tertiary cities. So the people in those cities can't even get in or out. They have to drive to other airports where the airfares are higher. You got airlines that are flying full flights because the demand is so strong. So therefore, law of supply and demand, the airfares go up. If you've got a frequent flyer mile you want to redeem, good luck. Not going to happen because the airlines don't want to give up a revenue seat when the planes are all full. And then, of course, you've got staffing shortages, air traffic controller shortages. That's one of the reasons why the airlines were flying 10% fewer flights on the East Coast. You got TSA staffing shortages, which means longer lines at security checkpoints. And then, of course, we get to throw in weather. So the fact that we passed the stress test more or less during the Memorial Day weekend was more a fact that the weather didn't weigh in.
So with all those things, a lot of them being pretty negative, especially on the wallet, are there things you can do even in this climate to try to save some cash?
Well, it's not just saving cash, it's saving sanity. You want to book the very first flight of the day. You've heard that advice before, but I'm going to add to that. You want to book the very first flight of the day on an airline that's not based in that city, which means that that plane came in the night before with that crew stays with the flight, and you have a reasonably good chance of getting out the next morning. That's number one. Number two, watch your scheduling because the airlines really haven't adjusted their schedules properly. There are still flight connections there listed as a 33-minute connection, and they think that's a legal connection time. That's not legal. That's absurd. The other day, I was on a very packed, in fact, fully packed 737 with 179 other passengers. And when we got to the gate, I got out my iPhone and did the stopwatch to find out, well, on average, how long did it take people just to get off the plane? You know what the average was? 23 minutes. So a 33-minute connect time is not even on the table. It's ridiculous. And the problem is people will book those connect times, miss that next flight, and even if the airline wants to put them on the one after that, they can't because that plane is already full. So you need to give yourself a 2.5-hour buffer between flights if you have to connect flights. If you can fly nonstop, do it. But if you got to connect flight, 2.5 hours minimum.
And again, I heard you on your travel update talking about some of the carriers that you might want to fly if you're going to Europe, if you have a big trip, things like Norse that I had never even heard of. Maybe some of those options might be a good idea in this climate?
Yeah, there are some new airlines battling it out over the North Atlantic. When that happens, airfares tend to come down. On the coach side, you've got airlines like Play out of Iceland. You've got Norse Atlantic out of Oslo. And of course, you've got on the business class side, you have airlines like La Compagnie that goes into Newark with reasonably attractive business class fares. I mentioned the coach fare to Europe. You know what the business class fare is to Europe right now? It's $10,000. Now, the thing that makes no sense to me is they're filling the planes. So somebody's spending the money, which brings up another issue about how long can this be sustained? Because right now, consumer credit card debt is nearing $1 trillion. And under the Federal Reserve reporting, the 90-day delinquency rate of people with credit cards who can't make their payments and are defaulting is going way up. And that gives you an indication that people are going to start having some heart-to-heart talks with their wallet as we get through the summer, which means if you look for the forward projections, we are going to see some fares come down based on law of supply and demand after Labor Day. Now, this happens a lot seasonally, but it's really going to happen this year where you're going to see those fares come down because people may not be able to afford to travel.
Well, I just have about a minute left, Peter. Let's talk about what we'll see after Labor Day. Any hot spots, any things people should be thinking about doing if they do have, they pay off their credit cards this summer and they're going to travel after Labor Day? What's your advice?
Well, if they paid off their credit cards this summer, they can adopt me. But forgetting that, what you really want to do is take a look at September because that's always the magic month for travel, especially if you're going to Europe, the Mediterranean. It's uncrowded. The rates come down. You'll have the beaches to yourself, and you're not going to be standing in any long lines. And the rates have already started coming down. I mentioned Norse Atlantic. Starting, I think, September 8th, their round trip fare to London out of the East Coast, I believe, is about $416 round trip. That's a far cry from $2,200.
All right. Well, it certainly is good advice. And of course, I mentioned it, the travel updates on your website, tons of good information on there. So if people do want to find out more, petergreenberg.com is where you can go. You can listen to those travel updates and the same kind of great advice Peter shared with us this morning. You can pick up there as well. Peter, we appreciate you being with us, and not just being with us, but being with us afloat a day after, 2 days after being on a submarine. I love it. We'll have you back for sure. We appreciate you being here on CT23.
You got it, man. Thanks.
And you can check out Peter's website, as we said, petergreenberg.com. That is CT23 for this week. We appreciate you being with us. CBS Sunday Morning, of course, is coming up next. Have a great rest of your weekend. I guess the work's still not done in that other place, so we'll meet you back here in Studio B once again next Sunday morning.